Have you ever felt there was something missing or lacking in your life? I don't mean in your personal life, but I mean in your life's work. How many of you have ever experienced a life-transformative event? Well, my story begins after I had worked as a successful surgeon for almost 30 years. Shortly thereafter, my father died, and I took stock of my life. I later learned of a new master's program in global public health that was being offered by New York University. I checked it out, and I enrolled as a part-time student in the fall of 2006. That summer, I heard Dr. Alan Rosenfield, a pioneer in safe motherhood, speak about the lack of healthcare access to women in developing countries. I later met him at Columbia University, and I was so moved and inspired that I too wanted to focus my efforts to increase access to healthcare to women in developing countries. I became a full-time student. During the master's program, Yale University appointed me a career scholar in international health, and they wanted to link my surgical skills with my interest in women's rights. So they sent me to Uganda to learn and surgically prepare women who suffered with obstetric fistula. Now, I want to say that obstetric fistula are completely preventable. A fistula is a hole that can develop as a complication of childbirth. It's a horrendous condition. The woman can leak urine or feces from her vagina, and she's basically a pariah and ostracized from her village. She loses everything. This was the time of my life that everything changed. I was transformed by what I had witnessed. Each morning, on my way to the labor ward at Mulago Hospital, the National Referral Hospital of Uganda, I would pass by dozens of pregnant women waiting to deliver their babies. Some of these babies would undoubtedly die. Some of these babies would be born dead. Who knew which of these women would develop a fistula? Who knew which of these women would die from childbirth? This was gut-wrenching to see. I hesitantly walked into the operating room, and I met my mentor, Dr. Justice Baragani, a fistula surgeon and soon to become a close friend, and we repaired maybe 3 to 4 women that day. Fistula surgery was only done once a week at Mulago. Outside, those women waiting, lying on the ground, on blankets, with their infants and children's food, clothes strewn about, those images lasted in my mind's eye. I thought, how lucky I am to be in a country where health services are available. Why can't they be available here in Uganda or anywhere else where they're not? It had nothing to do with these women. They were just unlucky to be born in the wrong country. At the end of the day, I passed these women, and I was devastated. I had to hold back tears. And I was reminded of Dr. Alan Rosenfield, his words and his work. The next day, I'd come to the operating room and I'd pass by many of these women still waiting, and some were gone. When I did surgery at Mulago, sometimes there would be electrical outages, and I'd have to push the table to the window to get sufficient light to be cast onto the patient. Additionally, we'd have only a single size urine catheter to be used for women of any age. I was so disheartened, but I continued this routine for several more weeks. But I had had enough. I just couldn't take it anymore. The sheer number of women who live with fistula worldwide almost 2 million, and maybe 100,000 new cases a year, and only about 10,000 women get repaired. How many women die from childbirth and pregnancy? Maybe 800 a day. I felt compelled to do something about this. I met with government officials, politicians, parliamentarians, and I befriended the lead parliamentarian on maternal health, Honorable Sylvia Sinabulia. And she introduced me to stakeholders and arranged for me to speak at Parliament House, where I emphasized the fact that the women of Uganda are the lifeblood and soul of the country, that they are entitled to healthcare services as well as an education. I believed that they heard me, and I made a commitment to Honorable Sylvia that I would help with this tragic situation, and I would return to Uganda. But I made it clear to her that the people of Uganda must take ownership of their health care for eventually to become sustainable. And I was only there to assist, to strengthen the existing healthcare system. I was clueless as to how extensive and pervasive the problem of healthcare was until I had visited Mulago. This was just the tip of the iceberg. I returned to New York and started a new NGO called Life for Mothers. It was incorporated in late 2008. I appointed Honorable Sylvia to be a member of the board, and I returned to Uganda. She took me to her district, and at the Health Center 4, which is just below the level of a hospital, where our pilot project was going to be based, I saw the male and female wards. They were totally empty. The windows were shattered, the beds were rusted and broken, live chickens were running around inside. And in the operating theater, a midwife had taken up full-time residence with her 2 kids. An oven blew smoke directly into the operating theater. I was appalled. I asked my friend, Dr. Baragani, to visit the facility, and he did. He came, and he was mortified. He told me, "Harry, we must go to church and pray for my country because it is dying." I commiserated with him and apprised him of my intentions. Over the next 4 years, I shuttled between Washington, Kampala, and New York. And with the help of Honorable Sylvia, I obtained the necessary MOUs, registrations, partners, and a modicum of funds to implement phase 1 of our pilot project. I recruited 50 community health workers from 25 villages and trained them to use mobile health technology, went into the field, and registered 5,500 residents and 1,600 women of reproductive age into an electronic database in 18 days. This was the first time I appreciated what it meant for a woman to get to a health facility. Sometimes she'd have to walk 10, 12 kilometers. It would take her several hours. In the rainy season, it would be practically impossible for her to get there. And if she did get there, and there were no personnel, no equipment, what's the likelihood that she would ever return? These questions lingered inside me. The injustices these women endured were unbeknownst to me until I visited Uganda. The kindnesses I received from these women when I visited them in their homes, in their villages, will always remain inside me. These are good people, and they deserve to be treated with dignity, without stigma, and I will continue to fight for a woman's right to access health care and education, and for them to become their own agents of change. Thank you.